This is the story of a cat who goes to visit his favorite zoo for the first time in years. This heartwarming tale was sent to me by one of my viewers. So let's get right into it. The summer before I started high school, my family and I were going on a trip to visit some family friends in another state. And since we would be driving, our two cats at the time would not be able to come along. My mom found a great place that boarded cats while you're away. So we dropped them off there and then left for our trip. Fast forward a few days and we are almost done with our vacation. So we start planning the return trip home. We had booked a hotel for the night before we had to hit the road again because we wanted to take our time getting back. So when we got to the hotel, we put the cats back into their carriers and headed out to go find some food. After settling in, we took the cats out of the carriers to let them stretch their legs. It was a hot day, so we decided to head to an indoor mall nearby so they could run around in the AC. And much to our surprise, both cats immediately ran in opposite directions as soon as they saw the door open. Well, obviously, we freaked out and immediately went after them. We managed to catch one of the cats, but the other cat, let's call him Chester, had already made it outside and was gone. We couldn't see him anywhere, so we spent a good half hour looking for him. Just as we were about to give up, we heard meowing coming from inside the wall of this strip mall. I don't know how we could have missed it earlier, but there was this little hole in between the wall where he must have crawled through. So we tried calling him and coaxing him out, but he didn't budge. At this point, my mom was debating whether she should reach in there and try to grab him. But just then we heard footsteps behind us and turned around to see a little girl holding something in her hands. She looked at us and said, "Is this your cat?" And sure enough, it was Chester. She must have found him hiding in between the walls and realized he was lost. Good job, kid. Of course, we thanked her profusely and gave her a big hug. Then we took Chester out of her hands and gave him lots of pets. He was a little scared, but otherwise fine. Once we made sure he was okay, we decided to head back to the hotel. We knew we couldn't leave Chester in the mall, so we needed to bring him along. As we were walking back, Chester stopped dead in his tracks and started staring intently at something. At first, we thought it was another cat, but then we realized it was a little girl pointing at him and asking her parents if she could pet him. Of course, they said yes. And the next thing we knew, Chester was surrounded by 3 little kids who were taking turns petting him. I don't know how long we stood there watching him socialize with these kids, but eventually we had to leave and go back to the hotel. Now, all this had been a huge adventure for Chester. So once we got back to the room, we gave him some food and water and then let him curl up on my bed until it was time to go. When we woke up the next morning, we fed him again and then put him in his carrier. Since we had an 8-hour drive ahead of us, we figured he would probably want to sleep the whole way. We were right. He slept all the way until we arrived at the boarding facility. No! Here's the thing. The boarding facility was actually at the same vet office where we had taken Chester and his sister as kittens to get their first shots and stuff. And since he had been gone for so long, I think he had forgotten what that place smelled like. You see, animals can smell things that we humans can't. And they have such great noses that they can track scents over huge distances. So when he smelled the familiar scent of that vet office, he became extremely anxious and wouldn't stop meowing, thinking that we had brought him to an appointment or something. Anyway, once we got home, Chester seemed pretty happy to see us again. But the next day, he didn't want to eat. And though he didn't seem sick, he also didn't seem like himself. So we decided to take him to the vet, just to be safe. The vet tech took one look at him and told us he was completely blocked. If we had waited any longer to bring him in, it could have been fatal. Luckily, after an emergency surgery and a few days of recovery, he was back to normal. A few months later, we decided to take Chester and our other cat to the vet for their annual checkup. After the vet tech checked them over and gave them their vaccines, the vet came in to check them over as well. I was sitting there holding Chester, and the vet asked me if I knew he was a diabetic. Apparently, the surgery to remove his blockage had put him into early onset diabetes. It was quite a shock for us to hear this, but the vet said that it was nothing that we did wrong. Sometimes cats just develop health conditions like this. So she gave us some pamphlets and some tips on how to help manage it. Then she handed Chester back to me and said, "Don't worry, he's gonna be just fine." And honestly, I wasn't worried. Looking at him now, I can't believe it's been 10 years since that crazy adventure at the mall. We had to change his diet, give him insulin shots twice a day, and monitor his blood glucose levels every week. But he took all of this in stride. He never let diabetes slow him down. He loved going to the vet. He would always rub against the staff and purr loudly. Even the shot never bothered him. Even when he was a senior kid, he would just stare at the vet with big eyes until she was done, and then he would demand pets. Now, even though Chester has passed away, the memory of this adventurous cat lives on. Thank you so much for sharing this sweet story about Chester. That was one heck of an adventure that cat had. But it sounds like he lived a happy life afterward. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please click the like button and subscribe for more stories like this one. I'll see you next time.